Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Martin, and I hope I will be joined shortly with my colleague Carl Castro from the US. I hope that this is a quiet evening in Ukraine. Go back to the first slide, please. There we go. Um, Today's presentation about lessons learned in parenting while at war was suggested to us by our American colleague, Amy Adler, from the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. Amy has presented at a number of these sessions, and I hope that if you haven't heard her presentations, you will go back and look at them. Amy suggested this idea based on conversations she had recently with a number of Ukrainian soldiers while she was visiting Ukraine, who talked about the issues they deal with in trying to parent while serving in the military and especially while serving in combat. So we thought that today would be a good day to try to address this topic. I'm going to highlight a few issues from America's experience in war, dealing with families and the issue of effective parenting. This has been a important issue for the U.S. At least since the 1970s, and a lot of research has gone on in America associated with parenting by soldiers. This, though, has been in the context of America's overseas wars and very limited deployments, typically about 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year. Quite different than what Ukraine has experienced. And that's why Amy thought it would be important to talk about this, because Ukraine has been at war for 3 years, and you have a unique experience now of dealing with these issues. And so we're going to try to highlight some of that today. I want to begin first, though, by sharing some of the experiences that the U.S. has had. Go to the next slide, please. So, U.S. researchers have found that children with parents who are deployed to war tend to worry more and to be afraid and sad. And this is regardless of the age of the child or the gender. Age will vary in terms of the nature of the fear, but all children experience this. During a war, a child may feel that their world is less safe and predictable, and children fear for their parent or other family members who may be deployed at war. Scenes of war in the U.S. have often been highlighted on our newscasts, and they often present very graphic images of what soldiers experience. I'm not sure what is presented to the Ukrainian public, but in America, our news and our newscasts often are very graphic. Next slide, please. So we know that parenting while in combat is an incredibly challenging situation. It often involves significant emotional strain and stress. The limited contact with children is a challenge for parents, and they often have to rely on support networks at home to try to maintain connection and to provide for the child's well-being while that service member is facing the dangers of war or active duty. Next slide. So I want to highlight just a few of the key aspects of parenting in combat from the United States experience. Clearly, the issue of limited communication that has changed over the years since the 1970s when communication was often difficult. Now with cell technology, often there is email or even text messages, sometimes video messages, phone calls on occasion, and still some people write letters, typically via email. So communication has gotten better, but it's still a challenge. The emotional stress is ever present, impacting on the parent's mental state, and it presents a challenge in terms of being able to effectively perform one's military duties. Parents often feel guilt and they worry about their children. And And this is regardless of the age of the child. Children themselves often have these feelings. As I said, there's a dependence on support networks. That's why they become so critically important. Friends and family members that one can rely on that can provide practical and emotional support to children while a parent is deployed. And so this has become a very important aspect of U.S. response to this challenge. As I said, there are many coping mechanisms that parents use to try to stay in contact with their children. Just as an aside, a number of years ago, I did a study looking at the communications of parents at war to their children, actually in the American Revolution in the 1700s. George Washington, who had his soldiers deployed facing the British. And we looked at some of the letters that parents wrote home to their children. And we compared that with current email letters that soldiers were sending home. And it was amazing that the issues were still the same and the parents' concerns were still the same, regardless of the context of, the revolutionary period and now current wars. Next slide. So recognizing some of the key impacts on children, it's the anxiety and the fear. There are behavioral changes that often occur that we see in children, and the difficulty that they may have understanding the situation, which is often related to the age and the maturity of the child. But when parents are away in war, children struggle to try to understand and to deal with the fear that they have about their parents' well-being. Next slide. So looking at support systems for military families becomes critical for any service. In the U.S., the various military branches have dedicated programs and resources for families when service members are deployed. That often includes counseling for the caregivers, for the children, and educational support to ensure the well-being of the child. U.S. military units do a lot of work in preparation for sending their units overseas. The effort to try to provide as much reassurance as they can about their parent or service members' well-being. Next slide. So go back one slide, please. So I also want to highlight the fact that combat often results in combat injuries. And this is a very important topic. How we assist families when there's a death or a serious injury. I've highlighted here a web link to a brief guide. It's written in English, unfortunately, but it provides some recommendations for policymakers and mental health providers. This is one of a series of documents at the Uniformed Services University in their stress-related research program. And I highly recommend that you try to look at some of these. I know that a few of them are translated already into Ukrainian. So with that, I don't know whether Carl has joined us. Carl, are you present? I don't see him. I know he'll try to log on. He's traveling today. So let me then turn this back to Oleg to moderate. We have some Ukrainian presenters who are going to highlight some of your experiences. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the things that we've experienced in the US. So Oleg, back to you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for this opportunity. Hope you can hear me well. I was thinking which language I should speak because sometimes it's easier for me to speak English professionally, but this is a very sensitive topic for me personally, so I decided to speak Ukrainian. First of all, I would like to congratulate our brethren, brothers and sisters with the Day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, with the Day of St. Nicholas, and also with yesterday's day, the Day of Volunteer of Ukraine, and these holidays, this commemoration, these days uh, show our unity in Ukraine. So I wish everybody who is related to these topics. Thanks to Natalia, I distributed more than 1,000 good information materials for our units. As for the topic, I will be very brief, and then I will give the floor to more people who are more professional in this topic, because in this regard, I'm rather a client. And parenting during the war, this is my largest operational stress, and also this is my big motivation. I understand why I'm fighting in this war, why I am not leaving the army. I have a son, Severin. He is 6, and today we were talking with him. We were sharing uh, some things about the celebration. So I was noticing what I'm doing to keep in touch with him, because keeping in touch is difficult. Uh, Very often I notice that I postpone calls to him because it makes us both very sad. So I allow myself to take pauses for several days, and then I contact him, and then I understand it's important to call him every day. And then I have this period of sadness again. And so in the process of contact, you understand that you have to do it consistently. But after the conversation, you sort of stay alone with your sadness. So we were dancing with him together. He was eating his porridge, cereal, and he turned the music on. So we tried to dance together. We did some movements, some fun things. So it's not important what you say, but we were trying to synchronize. And today I felt some additional contact with my son. I would like to give the floor to Natalia and Iryna. We have not met yet. So the girls, please. Also, I hoped that my brothers and sisters would be here to share their experience. But somewhere inside, I felt that this is a sensitive topic, not only for me. I contacted one of my friends 2 years ago, independently from one another. We participated in a good project. It is called A Lullaby from Dead. And it was very important back then. I'm going to find this lullaby program. I contacted him, uh, and the wife was abroad with children, but he refused to participate. He said that this topic is too painful for him. He was not ready to talk about what is happening. Then I stopped searching. Uh, if somebody from the audience would like to share, they will do. But probably today we will give the floor to the professionals. So, Natalia, please. Thank you, Oleg. In fact, you made a very sensitive introduction to today's meeting and discussion. Me and Iryna, we work in the expert team to support the families of service members, servicemen. Also, we start support groups for children of the military staff. If you will be interested, I will share the link with you. We will be happy to share our experience, to answer the questions, and maybe some audience member will also be ready to add some things to the topic, and maybe you have some questions that you would like to get answer to. But I think that no answer is sufficient in this topic, because connection is the most important thing that you would like to have. And Oleg, you have rightfully mentioned, I will focus on the year 2022. It arouses a lot of sadness and emotions on the both sides. And when military staff members are contacting us for individual counseling and in other ways, we hear a lot of things about sadness, and wives often tell that children are sad. So the younger the children are, the more it has to rely on the mother in the contacts, and mothers have to be creative in the contacts. Sometimes when the video connection or telephone connection is impossible. And sometimes we have other other situations when father is at home and the mother is serving in the army. So the mother is very often has responsibility for that. So this is a twofold question. Maybe you can give us, you can advise us how we should, in what way we should hold this discussion. Maybe we should have less of a lecture, but maybe more interactive communication among all people who would like to join. How do you see it, Jim and other colleagues?
I think that is a great idea.
So I see that we have here more women than men. So I don't know whether they are serving in the army or they are specialists in their fields. Personally, I would be really grateful to you if we could share our observations. For example, like you mentioned that in 2022, the situation was different. And to those parents who have been serving in the army for 3 years in a row, the situation has changed. I recently visited my friend, a single father. So the mother is not deprived of her maternal rights, but still he brings up his child himself, and he's bringing up his son, and he has always told me that this is the biggest thing that keeps him from joining the army. But of course, he understands that sooner or later he might be drafted. Especially if he's a single father, he has what to worry about. For me personally, this is an important observation. So maybe you can also share your observations. For example, how contacts between different people were maintained in 2022. For example, there were children who were 3 years old in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and now they are 6. So if their parents, if their father, for example, is serving, they have been without a father for half of their life. And of course, it is very important to discuss that. That is why personally I'm interested in absolutely everything. And I will be very grateful if among those present here, there are people who would like to share their experience, positive experience, negative experience. That would be just great, I agree. So let me suggest the following. I suggest that we share our observations, that we actually divide those observations into two areas, two sections. If we have experts who work with children and those who work with their children or their partners who are at home while their loved ones is serving in the army, I would like to divide our conversation into two tracks. So first, let us discuss difficulties or challenges that we face. Let us talk about challenges of different categories, of different age categories, of men and women, mothers and fathers. And second track is the following. So probably you can share your own experience and we can see what kind of experience we have here. Probably your experience of observation is quite challenging. Then we'd be happy to share that. Probably you have a positive experience, so you can share with us what approaches to this kind of situation work. Probably we can look for solutions together because probably simple solutions exist, but we are just not aware of them. The war has been going on for 10 years, and of course, we have a lot of experiences. I saw the gym notes. Yes, I think that's possible. Okay, so what we are seeing there, in terms of different age categories, we can share the following. I suggest that my colleague joins this conversation. So what we see, what I see from the military, and then I would like to ask Iryna to comment, and she will tell us about the point of view of children. And then, dear colleagues, we'll be happy if you comment. There are some challenging moments. For example, if the military talks to the adolescent child or a pre-adolescent child, they might be focused on their own life. They might use different coping strategies to cope with difficulties. For example, they might play video games or spend all the time with their friends. And if in such a moment the father calls, the child might say, "Oh, I'm okay, everything is okay." And of course, the soldier might be frustrated because he's been waiting for his child to talk to him, and the child is busy. And of course, we understand why that happens. But the father is frustrated. He's been waiting for this moment, for this conversation with his son or daughter for a long time. And they see that the answer of the child is quite distracted. So, yes, I am playing, everything is okay, I am with my friends. How are you? And of course, naturally, the father or the mother has this feeling, I am not loved. They do not wait me for coming back home. My child doesn't love me. So it is important that the soldier, that the military catches this emotion and understands, realizes that what it is about. Then probably they can continue asking the child, tell me what is happening, what are you doing? If they play online video games, then probably they might ask, at what level are you? Are you playing on your own or do you have friends? Then they open up potential topics for conversation. Because the adult has this challenge to talk to a child at the level that the child is. Of course, sometimes we adults want to impose our own opinion, our own thought, our own point of view, but of course we need to be at the child level in order for them to understand us. So probably Iryna can tell us about younger children. Yes, I can do that. It is quite interesting. Yes, it is happening simultaneously because younger children might also be hurt inside because their father or their mother are not included in the daily life. So they are only living in the present moment. For example, something happened today But younger children won't tell their parents in detail what has happened. It is important to ask first, but it doesn't mean that the child will share everything at once, especially if they haven't been talking to each other for a long time. So Natalia said that a lot depends on what kind of communication they have in between those phone conversations. Are they in touch? What kind of dialogue they have? What things they talk about with the other adult, with another adult, with the mother or the father? Do they live in this space where the other person is always present? For example, if the mother or the father are fighting, they have to be present even when talking to their child. And of course, children forget. They forget much faster than adults, especially when it comes to younger children. That is why this contact must be warm all the time. It is to be maintained at all times. So as for younger children, what I can see, so children adapt quickly. Children adapt to the fact that the father or the mother is not there at all times. They might be hurt, they might be worried. From time to time, they might recall. For example, today we have St. Nicholas Day. It is a children's holiday. It's the day where they receive gifts. And of course, they might think about how they celebrated this day before. And of course, if they do not get gifts, or they do not get attention from their parents, they might be hurt. But of course, children won't be talking about this all the time because children are living in the present moment. So it's different. That's the difference between children and adults, because adults, they are thinking about something that is not present now much more often. But children, they live in the present moment, and they live here and now. That is why we need to take that into account. In children, emotions are more sincere, and they are thinking about what is happening right now. And adults must be ready to tackle that. They should not be hurt. They need to be in the present moment with their children. Even, for example, if this phone call took place somewhere in the middle of the street when children did not expect it. Of course, it is important to take it into account emotions of the children, because it is very important for children. And here we see the second challenge when Oleg told us that in 2022 situation was different. And of course, they grow up, and very often they say that, for example, my child has grown, they haven't seen her or him. And of course, a lot of responsibility is on the shoulders of the mother or the father, so the partner that stays with the children at home. On one hand, they are responsible for maintaining the contact, informing about the changes, and creating some kind of a photo album, because it is necessary to be able to talk to the person, to talk to the children about what has happened. So the other partner, for example, the mother must keep in touch with the father to take photos, for example, to tell about different changes. And of course, when the father calls, can tell his child, oh, I see your mother sent me a photo about what you did yesterday. So I think it is very important to have these topics for the conversations. What is challenging now, many militaries say that they lose touch with the children, with the families, because they are far away from each other. For example, when when a mother, for example, took children abroad, they can only get in touch online, and it becomes very, very difficult to stay in touch. That is why photos and videos, they become this point of departure, and they know something about their children. It becomes even more challenging if parents were not really interested before in what the child does. They just took it for granted, and now they are living far away from each other, and they do not know what to talk about if they are not fully aware of the interest of the child. And of course, the answer is challenging yet simple. Start being interested in what your child loves and what they do. Talk to your wife, talk to your larger family. From my experience of wives, I know that younger children often participate in different events, such as, for example, mothers cook a favorite dish of their husbands, and then they watch their favorite films. They create symbolic things, symbolic gifts. For example, when they have the same thing and the same gift that the father and the child have, so it helps maintain this connection in touch, their connection. Some of them, they create some kind of nicknames, secret words that can mean something. So when this kind of interaction is working, then it's easier to work with the children. Emotions are difficult. Based on my experience, based on my observations, the more difficult situation of the military is, the more difficult it is to tackle all those emotional challenges. It is very difficult to open up to their emotions, to open up to their children, because we cannot only be half aware or half open to our emotions. We need to be fully open. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If we can explain this to the parents, that would be just great. Of course, for example, we need to explain them that if they feel sad, this sadness means that there is love. So this is kind of what I wanted to say now. Probably my colleagues would like to add anything. Probably you have some experience of tackling such challenges with your clients. Let us share what we know.
Можна я скажу? Так, будь ласка. Я тут при свічечці, світла немає.
Okay, I have electricity card. That is why I don't have lights around, but the light is inside of me. I work as a clinical psychologist at a hospital. I work with servicemen because we have quite challenging patients. We have a surgery room nearby, but yes, of course, our patients are quite challenging. We have also among our patients, there are adults and children, there are also civilians. That is why I face a lot of difficult situations. For example, there are couples of a man and a woman, when both of them serve in the army, and when the child stays with someone else, then it is very difficult because, for example, other women might say, "Oh, you are a bad mother because you left your child," and Because, for example, the military might also judge this woman who serves in the military. They say, oh, our wives stay at home to take care of the child. Why do you serve? So I would like to say that there are a lot of challenges, but it is quite obvious that since 2022, children, they have adapted somehow to this new life, but of course they forget a lot of things. For them, their fathers become some kind of a cartoon character, like a protagonist of a film, of a movie, and for them, they exist somewhere, but not here and. And of course, when the parents come back for a couple of days, children need several days to get used to this person, and they do not have enough time. They do not understand how to respond to what their father says. Because, of course, the children want to be with the fathers when they are at home, and when they are not at home, of course, it is very difficult to get as much attention. Fathers do not take an active part in bringing up the child. And that is why I think that children do not always understand what is happening, because the rules are constantly changing. If there was some kind of harmony in the family, then children understand better what is happening. The most difficult thing is the following. When I work with the military, very often they do not want to talk. They do not want to talk themselves because they do not actually know what to talk about. They don't know what they can tell us. What they can tell is different, but I mean, what they can tell, they don't want to share with their children. And for them, it is very difficult to open up.
And they also find it difficult to talk to their wives. And sometimes we can see children coming to volunteer in the hospital to visit the injured military staff members, but they are afraid of the military. They don't know what to do because they have been instructed, don't say this, don't say that, because you can say some wrong things. They are scared when they enter the hospital ward. And I tell the injured military, you used to be kids yourself. Sometimes veterans visited your classroom, and you just, when children come to your ward at hospital, just tell them something. And the military officers say, yes, we used to be children as well. But when our granddad told us something, it was like a fairy tale. And they don't know what to tell to the children. Sometimes they try to joke, but they don't often at a loss on how to tell jokes to children because they use their own army jargon. So they forget how to keep contact with the children because they have been there in their bubble for a long time. They are using their own army language. So this contact, even with children who come to visit them from school to the hospitals, this contact is getting lost. And as for their own children, if the mother and the father have this contact, then it's easier for the father to keep this contact with the child because they are trying to do this, to keep in touch. The way I see it right now, so we had some observations with the colleagues. So a lot of boys under 30, a lot of them don't have children or families. At the age up to 35, they have some beginnings during this 3 years of war. If we have people up to 45, many of them are divorced or married for the second time. And if children get born during the war, this is a very big resource for them. this is what motivates them to fight right now. This gives them a lot of emotions. So it's very difficult to work with those families where they have been married up to 10 years. I notice the strongest families among the military are for those people who are over 50. These are the stable families that give support. The children are grown up, sometimes they have even grandchildren, so the system has been established and everybody in the family has agreed to this state. And women who are older, they can even have more patience because when their husbands come back home, it takes some time to get adapted to them. So this is how it goes. Yes, Inna, a lot of thanks. I absolutely agree with you. Yes, I agree with you. It depends a lot on the relations between the father and the mother before one of them joined the army. And the strength of the marriage depends a lot on the previous relations. Some families are getting stronger during the war, even if their family is only 3 or 5 years old. But if they have a lot of things in common values, they can plan the second child or the third child. And on the other hand, if the family was struggling, very often the war makes people reevaluate their situation and think whether they want to continue during the war and to try to cope with it. I would like to point your attention to one more thing. As you have mentioned, very often the military staff members don't know what to talk about with their children. And I would like to share a life hack with you. I learned it from the military. So if this is an older child, if they can talk, you can talk about the child. Very often people are afraid that they don't have anything to tell to their children, to tell about their experience. But you can ask your child about their own experience, ask them how they are, about their emotions, and talk about your feelings to the child, about your emotions. So this can be the first point of contact with your child, and the military staff member can feel the connection with the child. And then they can go on and tell other stories about their experiences and emotions. Yes, I agree with you. I had some difficulties. I was trying to ask questions to my child. So I was asking why they changed the kindergarten, and he says, I don't remember. Half a year ago, he got familiar with the Facebook and that he could play games online. There are some simple games like mini golf, and chess. So the gaming has become one of the points of contact for us. Sometimes we can abuse it. So we can set some rules that we shouldn't play during the working days, only on holidays or weekends. But for several weeks, I noticed that I was trying to ask him questions, but not interrogating him, of course. And then he is asking me, Father, tell me about your experience, about your life, so we can have this two-way connection. Sometimes he doesn't listen to me all the time, but it's becoming more interesting. This is like a two-way contact, and it's very pleasing. Alexandra has raised her hand. Please. If it's still relevant. Yes, good evening. As a professional and as a mother and a wife, I would like to tell a few things because we used to be at a long distance from each other. So from my own experience, I can advise to continue with some small things, with some traditions that you used to have before the war, because the war is like a big milestone in our life. So, though we were at a long distance from each other, we could feel the unity. And you can be closer if you do something together. For our family, we used to have meetings every evening, and we were discussing the things we are grateful for, some small things, even if we don't have any topic to talk about. For example, we can say what good things we had today and what you did today, and everybody says several words about that. For example, everybody can say what they managed to do today, and we were saying what we are grateful for and to whom we are grateful. Sometimes we were grateful to ourselves or to each other, and through this gratitude we were trying to talk. And it helps us a lot. And we used to pray together, and we were asking each other about the needs that we are asking for during our prayer. So this is for people who believe, who have religious beliefs. So we were sharing things among each other, and this was uniting us. Or we used to have some walks, and we were having some telephone calls during the walk. So these are some very small things. You don't have to invent something new. You can have something usual, old things, like jokes, and you can keep to this, because you have to invest in your relations. And as we used to say, we sort of keep and devote this time to the families, because this is our responsibility. And I can suggest you to read the Facebook posts of Svetlana Royce. She is writing about how she is coping with these hard times when her husband is away, and they are trying to do some simple things online on the computers to keep in touch, and to maybe to give these small toys to each other, to keep contact through these small things. Because a family is a building block of our people. And we have to survive as people, and not only survive, we have to be striving. And if we spend some time on the family, not on the residual basis, we have to devote this time. And if you have problems, you can go to the family psychologists, because this is important. And this is also important in terms of the war, because our people are getting separated into different groups. A group of those people fighting the war and not fighting the war. And our families are getting divided on different issues as well. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. And one of the challenges that my son is facing, as Alexandra has mentioned, the separation. So around him, he can see his friends and parents of his friends, so he can see a lot of men with the children. And this is a sensitive topic for him, and he doesn't understand why this is happening, why this inequality is happening, or injustice. And when I'm trying to show some values to him, like 2 years ago, he says, no, I want you to be with me. And I'm telling that he is a military kid. Remember that you are a military kid. And the most difficult thing is when we have to say goodbye at the railway station. 1 year ago, I broke my spine and I could spend several months at home. I had a legal leave, a long-term leave. But anyway, regardless of the time you spend with your family, you have to get prepared to say goodbye. And usually this is very difficult. Well, sometimes I can skip it, but we have to do it. And your child is clinging to me and crying, and I still haven't found a way to agree with him. Well, sometimes I can leave him some items like a hat, like a transitory objects. Sometimes this works, or some code words. So we can have some common secret words or secret phrases and develop our culture of talking. Yes. You always feel sad if you love this person, and this is a close one when you have to part, and he is not with you because you have to leave. We used to have it even before the war when people had to go to travel on some business assignments for a long time. And moreover, during the war, we have this. Sometimes children need an adult to be around to feel safe. Because it's impossible for the child not to cry, not to feel sad in such a young age. Maybe Iryna can give some more comments about that. Yes, Oleg, you gave a good piece of advice about some transitory items of things. In any way, it is important for a child, even if you are not around, it is important for a child to have something, to have some evidence that you are around with her. Sometimes children give some toys or items to the adults, or write some letters or messages for you to keep. So it's important that you show it, that you are taking this. I'm taking this with me, and I will keep it close to my heart. This means connection. And children also feel the same things. But sometimes, though, they don't understand what is happening. And it's easier for an adult to speak about what is happening than for a child. Though children are more open, sometimes they have a more vulnerable and open position, and they say the things as they are, even though it may hurt the adults. So maybe some people from our audience would like to comment. Maybe we have some service members who would like to share their experience. This is a very important topic for the people who are present today, but maybe not everybody is ready to discuss
Maybe
it
international
right now.
colleagues can share their experience as well. Probably you had multiple deployments, and it also create some bias in connection.
While we're waiting, Oli, to give people a chance to think about sharing, let me add another issue that I think is important. In the US, we talk about military connected family members. So this is not just the children of military members, but it's those other extended family members who share the same kind of worry and concern. So we have many young soldiers. So, for example, they often have younger siblings who don't get identified as a military child, but who worry about their brother or sister who's serving in combat. For older service members, we often have nieces and nephews who may have concern. I will share a personal story. My son was deployed to Iraq in intense combat during the Iraq War. And his sister lived in Washington, D.C., and had two young daughters, 8, 9 years old, who would see on television scenes of this horrific fighting and were worried about the uncle that they loved. But my daughter, so close to this, emotionally could not talk about it with her children. And it reminded me of the important role that schools often play in identifying as a service to society the needs of all children who worry about a loved one. And schools can often provide an opportunity for children to connect and to be recognized for the worry and concern that they have. So my encouragement for those of you in Ukraine is to think about military connected children and to cast a very broad net in terms of who you identify and reach out to and provide support. So I hope there are some other members of the audience today who can share some of their own experiences. Thank you.
So, if nobody wants to respond, I would like to do that, but I'd rather wait until someone else's responds. Well, if we have here colleagues who have children, it would be interesting to hear from them. So what kind of communication do you have at school? Do your children talk about the war, about the military? Is this issue discussed in schools? Is it accessible to children? I would like to respond to that in terms of children. So most children are supported at school. This is very important. And those children who lose their parents to the war, they have a lot of support. This is about unity. This is about cohesion around this child. No matter what happens at home, they are supported in school. And of course, there's a lot of support in the school. I know personally such children. When it comes to the relatives, I often work with people who had stroke, and I use Hudson tests. We also test for depression and anxiety among our patients. And now almost everyone, almost each and every grandmother who had a stroke, they have their children or their grandchildren, both men and women who joined the military. And because of that, they are under constant stress. And they compare the stress to their illness, and they say that this stroke, and the same goes with cancer patients. They also say that they are partly affected by this stress. My patients have in the family someone who is serving or who has served. And the more dangerous the situation is, the worse it is. This pressure, this tension, this anxiety, and this is the atmosphere in the family where children grow up. And children actually adapt to this better than adults who should have had probably more adaptive skills. However, children adapt better. Although adults have more coping strategies and more adaptation skills, they do not always cope with that. I don't know how it will impact the children in the future, because the children grow up seeing all this. And recently, I've been to many events like this, and many people say that when the man joins the military, everything like responsibility is on the wife, and we need to do everything. It seems like the man protects the country, but then the wife has to be responsible for everything else. If, for example, there is bullying at school, they also have to protect the children. And because of these problems, mothers sometimes also have misunderstanding. I mean, they sometimes are hurt, or they have a lot of things to do. Within the past few years, we were talking about femininity, about women, but right now we are talking about survival. I think it's the same situation that our grandmothers had during the Second World War. So we are going back to these intergenerational programs that our grandmothers transferred to us. They brought up children alone. They were single. And of course, this is sad. But on the other hand, we have this kind of genetic experience, and that is why we can cope with that. Thank you. It is important to see such a large framework. It is great that at schools children are supported. We talk about it at all possible levels. We have cooperation with the children, especially when children have to grow up under difficult conditions. So we do not have this communication in all the schools, and it's also very important to understand. We know that, all those who live on the territory of Ukraine know that. We understand the conditions under which we are growing, because everyone is exhausted. Teachers are exhausted. Everyone is exhausted. And they also have a lot of experience. And of course, we can also help others. Dear colleagues, probably you can also reply to Jim's answers, to Jim's questions, I'm sorry. Do you have any observations, or do you want to share anything? So, what do you have to face? I would like to add to that. So I'm talking about children or even families who had relations with families from Russia. They have this misunderstanding, sometimes aggression. Sometimes they want to protect themselves. They want to say, we are different, we are good, we are not like them. My grandfather is from Khabarovsk, but he was a good one. So this is a question of identity. They want to be good under such conditions where everything is not clear for the children. So on one hand, they understand that there are the good and the bad, but on the other hand, they are kind of lost because they think, yes, we were on good terms with them.
Вони не підтримуються на даний момент, наприклад. Або підтримуються іноді, так само.
So that's the question of relations.
Ну так. І тут глибші такі питання постають, да?
Yes, there are a lot of questions about values in the family. It depends on the narratives, on what the family is discussing. So I see that somebody has raised their hand. Yes, I would like. I just don't want to interrupt my colleagues, but I would like to try it. So in May, I was talking to my colleagues in Vienna about what is happening with us, because I'm also a coach in family psychotherapy, and we were discussing this in a small group. Our interpreter was young, but he was very open with her emotions, and she was very expressive. And we understood that as war is going on in Ukraine since 2013, and back then, the younger generation who are about 20 years old, they are starting working as adults. And unfortunately, this time is not the best one. On one hand, they are grown-ups. On the other hand, they have a lot of traumas. And then second, the question is about what the war does to us all, to us adults. They change our emotions. We can get into very violent emotions. We can be angry, we can be mad, and on the other hand, we can also get into depressive emotions. And then there are children. For example, I had a client who is 26 years old. She refuses to socialize, to talk to others, although she worked abroad, she was very active. So probably she's depressed, but I have a hypothesis, and probably it would be interesting for you to discuss that canalization of emotion from anger, from rage to depression. Probably it was shaped when these children grew up. There are now more cases of depression, suicide, bullying, eating disorders, and I think that there is some kind of deformation of child development. Of course, we can tell our children that everything is okay. For example, yesterday I had a woman, a mother, at a consultation, and she told me, I am so tired, and I have to care about my grandmother, I have a child, so probably we can get united around not using these norms of normal function of traditional family, because the situation isn't abnormal now. I've been in Ukraine all this time. Sometimes I get abroad, talk to colleagues to get some rest, but I understand that my emotional state is not stable. When I'm working with such clients, I ask the family to be more kind to the child. For example, if the child refuses to eat the way their parents want, or they don't clean up their room, I ask parents to be there for their children and not to force something upon them. Unfortunately, in some cases, there are people who die, and for children, this is a secondary loss, because for them, they Sometimes their fathers are some kind of an important figure, but for example, the mother is also an important figure for the child in terms of expressing their emotions. And if the mother cannot really cope with the situation herself, then it is even more difficult for the child. That is why it is very important to take care of ourselves and then to support the children. Even those if it's not completely normal, for example, if there is an age regression in children when they want to sleep with their parents because they are afraid of the dark, maybe we shall let them do that because everyone is traumatized. Thank you.
Дякуємо, Майя. Я думаю, що тут такий виклик у ваших
Thank you. I think it is
гіпотезах
quite
дуже
challenging,
потужний
and
для
you have a
нашої
lot
всієї
of
спільноти.
powerful hypotheses, which are very important for
Тому
our
що,
community,
всі, хто працює
because everyone who works with personalities understand the importance of a secure attachment based on which we build the social interaction skills. But there is this story about abnormality. I would like to make a turn. Ira, I would like to comment on the following because we are discussing very important issues, and if we are exhausted, can we be a foundation for our child? What will be the support for our child if we cannot do it to them? The mother, if she is a single mother because her husband is at war, they need to play these two roles of a mother and a father. So Ira, maybe you can comment on that. I would like to tell you about honesty, because children, they can read our emotions, they can read our truth. Even if we say that everything is okay, they see the truth. So, dear colleagues, I would like to tell you the following. It is very important what you said. It is not only important what parents say, but what they do. So this is a classics, and this is what we do with our patients. We say it is important what you do rather than what you say. So I think the same principle works here. Yes, of course I can say. We have different deficits, different lacks. We have this ideal image where the mother and the father give their child everything they could have given. That is why we can see the situation, life is life, and what is important here Maya said. So I'm just trying to understand what to say. Well, the child sees that the mother is not fully active, then they wouldn't want less from the mother. And then we have a conflict.
Якщо немає оцього такого в контакті, що я бачу, що тобі зараз якось погано, тобто емоційний такий, емоційно чутливий такий контакт, якщо є у
That is why it is very important to have this emotional connection between the children and the parents. If there is this contact, then it is better because families are different. There are families where When parents say something, the children have to do that, but there are others where parents develop emotional intellect in their children. And of course, it is very different. Children would react differently to their parents, to the absence of capacity of their children to give them something. But of course, children will continue wanting a lot of things. And of course, we have those deficits. What is important is contact. It is very important to not lose this content. To not lose this content, to not lose this touch of love. So that's exactly what everything will be based upon, this attachment. For children, a mother and how angry they might be with them, no matter how hurt they are, they still love each other. Mother is the mother and father is the father. So first and foremost, the children will be based upon this. But when it comes to adults, with Natalia, we discussed recently the following. Adults do not always understand what children want. They do not always understand the needs of their children. And of course, life is difficult. And all of us have to work a lot. All of us have to worry a lot. We do not always sleep properly. Sometimes it is very useful to change roles with your child. To think about what your child thinks. To try to understand what the child wants, what the child needs, what they feel. Try to imagine what they want. And I think that in such a case, you will receive a lot of answers to your questions about what you can give to your child. It's not easy. It's very difficult, but that's what we need.
Natalia, I would like to invite my colleague, Rachel Foster, who is from the US, who has presented at the seminar before, to offer her comments and experience as a mental health provider in dealing with American families. Rachel?
Yes, thank you, Jim. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this really important discussion focused on children and how we can best support them, and really reflecting on the needs of parents during this critical time of war. And part of what I'll say briefly is that I think that there is just a fundamental difference between the experiences that men and women have when they are at war, if they have children, and when they're separated from their children. I don't have enough time to unpack all of that during this conversation, but I think it's largely hardwired. And from that, what we can do is just learn and help kind of understand, help our clients understand if we're working with them in the war zone, and how they can best understand their own feelings about being separated from their children, and then attend, to those children who are left at home. And so to add to that, what I would say is there's a very sort of famous image of an American female soldier being reunited with her child as that child is being, as they're being redeployed, reunited. And I did not put that image in my presentation from March because it's a copyrighted image. And maybe I can share it after today and it gets sent around. But that is the experience of women. That image encapsulates very clearly the experience that women experience when they're a military member separated from their child during a time of war. That excruciating pain, it is almost guttural. It is visceral. And I will not at all say that men don't have their own experience, but the experience of a mother being separated from her child during the time of war is different, fundamentally different. And that image, I think of that image still because I didn't have that experience when I was deployed. I was not yet a mother, but I worked with women who were colleagues and on my staff and clients. And the experience is very different. It is very different. And so for the mothers who are going through this experience, who are at war and separated, we just have to allow them to experience their feelings and then teach them how, if possible, even if it's possible, sometimes it's not, to compartmentalize those feelings as best they can, put them in a jar, for that time, and then keep their child in their heart uh, with an image, keeping them as close as they can through a picture or an image in their pocket, in their military uniform, their soldier uniform, and keeping that child as close as they can energetically, because it is a very different experience. And what mothers that I know that I worked with who were separated from their child during a time of war, they would do whatever they could, and they would prepare themselves for these conversations. Someone was talking about this earlier. They would prepare themselves for those conversations to be as upbeat as they could, to be as positive as they could, and then they would go into the conversation fully prepared, and you may even say armored to go into the conversation. They would be armored to go into that conversation so they could be so present for their child during the conversation, or whatever communication means or mode was available. And then they would but also express honest feelings, but they would guard themselves, so they would be strong for their child. And those are the things that I want to share. I want to share also for the parents that are home, who it may be the mom at home, right? It may be the mom at home, doing all the roles that a mom would do when the male or the husband is deployed. Is that just depending on the age of the child, of course, really allow that child, if available, to draw, to color, to do art or painting. And when the child has a difficult time, and I know people talked about this somewhat already, just allowing him or her to really feel those feelings and encourage that artwork, again, depending on the age of the child, and use that opportunity for creativity to really express the feelings. And those are the things, just a few thoughts I have at this time. Thank you for letting me share this information.
Yes, we have absolutely the same reality. Thank you, Rachel. we have similar emotions of mothers who serve in the army, and it's important that there is an adult who can help the children to cope with the emotions through the art or through some other activities. This is very helpful. And in our experience, we see that very often wives ask us for help. They contact us on the hotline. We have a specialized hotline for the military and their family members that works from morning until evenings, and we get telephone calls from wives who are asking us, what else can they do? Or in the support groups, they are asking us about the ways to work with the children. For example, when the daughter doesn't want to interact with the father, when the father is visiting, the daughter doesn't want to accept him as father because she has offense against him. And then it's a question to the mother, how can they reestablish the connection? Or if the mother is leaving, I'm talking more about the experience of adolescents when they get offended because the father chose to go to the army and not to stay with the family and not to stay with me. They can be offended for this, and then the child becomes sad and seems to be estranged. But it's also an opportunity to find ways to go through the emotions, to have conversations, and we need to help to the women so that they can help their children express their emotions, whatever age the child is. There may be different ways. Sometimes this is sports activities or support groups or art workshops, or this may be some interaction at home or volunteering activities or some entertainment for smaller children. So these are the examples that work, and this is what wives of the military share with us. This is what they use in their practice. Rachel, thank you. Yes, this all works, and it's very relevant in our time. We can see it on a wide scale. Maybe some other audience members would like to express themselves, because I don't want to turn it to a lecture. Maybe somebody would like to share. I'm sorry, I don't have electricity, and the connection is interrupted. We are going to finish our meeting today. I would like to thank everybody. Yes, today is the day of the armed forces. Maybe people are celebrating, or maybe they are busy with other things. Thank you. So we need to finish right now. In 2 weeks, we are going to have a very interesting webinar and maybe more fun than this one. Thank you for inviting us. And once again, I would like to congratulate everybody with the Day of the Armed Forces. Thanks to our army, we have this opportunity to be here in spite of the challenges, to share our experience and look for solutions. A lot of thanks to you and your colleagues.
My thanks to everyone and my best wishes on Nicholas Day for all of you.
Jim, is there an opportunity for a comment?
Quickly, Sam.
Yes, great presentation. My comment was really based on the comments that were made by Rachel. I wonder if there's anything in terms of research and studies about the intersection of age and ethnicity relative to a parent parenting while at war.
That may be too broad a question to answer right now, but you put it out there, and if anyone has any information, they can get back to me or to Oksana, and we'll share that with you.
Yes, and I just say thank you for the question, and we can certainly follow up. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any specific research that can answer your question, but I imagine there's some out there.
Thank you.
Natalia, thank you for an excellent seminar today.
Дякуємо вам за те,
Thank
що
you.
є великою підтримкою для нас на
You are
сьогодні.
providing great support for us today. Thank you.